Welcome back to another episode of HR Game Changers. Today, we're going to be tackling something I'm sure a lot of you have faced, applying for jobs that seem maybe just a little bit out of reach. Brett Beauchamp-Russell had a blog post about getting jobs even when you aren't fully qualified for them, and, it got us thinking.
It is interesting, isn't it? I think almost everyone has felt underqualified at some point,
Yeah.
especially when you're going for something that's a real step up.
Yeah, it's almost a universal experience. So how do we shift our thinking from, oh, I'm underqualified to here's my potential? That seems like a pretty big leap.
It is a big leap, and it's a question I get a lot. You have to remember that companies are looking for more than just you checking all the boxes on a list. It's really about showing you can adapt.
Mhm.
You're willing to learn, you have potential to grow, and one of the best ways to do that is to highlight transferable skills.
Transferable skills. Okay, so
Yeah.
for anyone who hasn't heard that term before, what does that actually mean?
So think of it this way. Transferable skills are abilities that you've gotten from any experience. Past jobs, volunteering, or hobbies even. The key is that these skills are valuable even in new situations. It's about connecting what you've done to what the new role needs.
So instead of saying, well, I don't have experience doing this exact thing, you're kind of saying, hey, I've done this, and that's going to help me with this new role.
Exactly. And you'd be surprised by how many skills are transferable if you really think about it. Let's say you spent a few years in customer service, but now you're applying to be a project manager. They seem totally different at first, but think about it. In customer service, you learned communication, problem solving, maybe even organization and time management. Those are all important in project management.
Absolutely. They want someone to handle problems and keep things running smoothly and communicate well with the team. And suddenly your customer service skills are super relevant. So for our listeners, how can they start to figure out what their transferable skills are? Where do you even begin?
You can start with your resume. Don't just look at your job titles. Think about the skills you were using at each job. What were you most proud of? What were the toughest problems you solved? What did you learn? When you look back that way, you start to see some patterns, and those are your core transferable skills.
It's a great way to reframe how you think about your past and the value you bring. So once you've identified those skills, how do you show them off in your application? This leads us to the dreaded cover letter. I know. But they're still really important, especially here.
It's true. The cover letter is your chance to tell your own story, to connect the dots for the hiring manager. You get to explain how your past experiences, even if they're from different fields, have prepared you for this job.
So instead of saying, I don't have experience with X, it's more like, in my last role as a Y, I developed Z skills, which I think would be great in this position. Because
Exactly. It's about focusing on what you bring to the table. You need to paint a picture of how your skills make you a good candidate. Don't be afraid to get specific. Use examples from your past to show those skills in action.
that makes sense. But what if you're missing a specific technical skill that the job needs? Is it even worth applying then?
Not so fast. This is where a growth mindset comes in, and that can be a total game changer.
Growth mindset. We hear that a lot, but for those who don't know it well, what is it?
A growth mindset is basically believing that your abilities aren't fixed, that you can develop them with hard work. It's about being open to learning, taking on challenges, and seeing setbacks as chances to grow. And when you're job hunting, that can bridge the gap if you're missing a specific technical skill.
Because it shows you're willing to learn what you need to know, and you're not afraid to do the work.
Exactly. Companies want people who have this. In fact, remember that LinkedIn study we talk about? 89% of recruiters said they prefer candidates with strong soft skills and who are eager to learn even over someone with a long list of technical skills.
Wow, okay. So how do you actually show that growth mindset while you're job hunting? How do you make it real for a potential employer?
It's about showing that you're a good learner. When you go to an interview, have examples ready of times you learn new skills. Maybe you taught yourself some software or took on a challenging project or even went and got specific training to learn something. Those stories show that you're adaptable and you want to grow.
So it's not just saying it, it's showing them.
Right. And if you're working on filling a skill gap, tell them. You can say something like, I haven't mastered X software yet, but I'm taking an online course right now to become proficient.
That's great. You're acknowledging the gap, but you're also showing them you're doing something about it.
Exactly. And it goes back to that growth mindset. Employers love that.
Now, this is making me realize how important self-awareness is in a job search. You have to know what you're good at, but also be honest with yourself about where you might need to grow.
Oh, definitely. And sometimes the skills you think you're missing might not even be that important for the job. And this brings us to another interesting thing about hiring cultural fit.
Cultural fit, what does that even mean when you're job hunting?
It means how well your personality values work style. Your whole approach fits in with the company's culture and the team.
So it's not just about having the right skills. It's about being a good fit overall for the company and the team.
Yes. And sometimes being a great cultural fit is even more important than having every single skill, especially if they believe they can train you on those technical things.
They want someone who's going to do well in the environment, be a positive part of the team.
Right. Companies want people who will do the job well, but also believe in the company's values.
Okay. So how do you show W cultural fit when you apply an interview? Seems a little hard to pin down.
It can seem that way, but you can show it. First, do your research. Really try to understand the company's mission, values, and culture. Look at their website, social media, even reviews on Glassdoor.
You can get a pretty good sense of a company's culture from how they present themselves online. Are they really formal and corporate or more casual and innovative?
Exactly. Once you get a feel for that, you can tailor your application and interview answers to show how your values match theirs.
So if a company really cares about teamwork, you might give examples of how you've been a good team player in the past, or if you've led successful team projects.
Perfect example. You're connecting the dots for them. You're showing them you'd be a good employee, but also a good addition to the team. So speaking of skills, what about actively developing your skills, not just for one job, but for your whole career?
That's so important. Upskilling is an investment in yourself. It makes you a better candidate for any job.
It's not just about meeting the bare minimum for a job. It's about always getting better and staying ahead in your field.
Things change so fast in the job market. There are always new technologies, new ways of doing things.
By constantly upskilling, you become more marketable, but you also show that you're committed to growth and adapting to change.
And hiring managers definitely notice that. They value that.
It shows that you care about your career and are willing to work at staying relevant. Even if you're already qualified for a job, upskilling can give you an edge.
You're going above and beyond, not just settling, but with so many options, it can be overwhelming. What advice do you have for people who aren't sure where to start?
My best tip: look at job descriptions for the types of jobs you want. What skills do they all seem to have in common? Those are the areas you might want to focus on developing.
So be strategic. Make sure your goals for upskilling match your career goals.
Right. And think about the resources that are available to you. There are great online learning platforms like Coursera, Udemy, edX. They have tons of courses and certifications.
Don't forget about workshops, conferences, events. Those are great for learning new skills and networking with people in your field.
And upskilling doesn't have to take up all your time. Even a few hours a week can make a huge difference over time.
It's about making it a habit, working it into your routine.
The more you learn, the more confident you become, and that confidence will come through when you're applying for jobs and in your whole career.
I love that. I think we need to pause here and give everyone a chance to absorb all this great information. We'll be back in a moment with even more strategies to help you land that dream job.
We were talking about the power of networking, but another thing that can be tricky is being afraid to admit you don't have every skill. It can feel like you're hurting your chances.
Right, it feels risky.
It makes sense to feel that way. We all want to look totally qualified and ready to go, but here's a different way to look at it. Honesty paired with a real eagerness to learn can actually be really powerful.
So you're saying it's better to be upfront about where you need to improve instead of trying to hide it.
Think about it from the other side. If you were hiring someone, wouldn't you rather have someone who knows their weaknesses and wants to grow, someone who's not pretending to know everything but eager to learn?
Makes sense. Authenticity and a desire to learn are great qualities. But how do you talk about those gaps without sounding like you're not qualified? It's a tough line to walk.
The key is how you say it. Don't focus on what you don't have. Focus on what you're doing to get better. You could say something like, I haven't mastered X software yet, but I've already started taking online courses to get proficient.
That's a great example. It shows you're taking initiative and you're committed to learning. You're being honest about the gap, but you're also showing that you're working to close it.
Exactly. And it all goes back to that growth mindset. Employers really respond to that.
This makes me realize how important it is to know yourself when you're job hunting. You need to know what you're good at, but also be honest about where you could get better.
Absolutely. And sometimes the skills you think you need might not even be that important for the job. This brings us to another interesting factor in getting hired: cultural fit.
Cultural fit. What does that mean when you're looking for a job?
It means how well your personality, your values, how you work your whole approach fits in with the company's culture and the team.
So it's not just about your skills. It's about whether you'll be a good fit for the company as a whole.
Exactly. And sometimes being a great cultural fit is even more important than having every skill, especially if the company thinks they can train you on the technical stuff.
So they want someone who will thrive in the environment and be a good influence on the team.
Yes, companies want people who will do the job well, but also fit in with the company's values.
Okay, so how do you show that cultural fit when you're applying and interviewing? It seems a little vague.
It can feel that way, but there are things you can do. First, do your research. Try to understand the company's mission, values, culture. Look at their website, their social media, even employee reviews on Glassdoor.
Yeah, you can usually get a good idea of a company's culture from their online presence. Are they really formal or more laid back and creative?
Right. Once you have a feel for that, you can tailor your application and your answers in the interview to show how your values match theirs.
So if a company talks a lot about teamwork, you might give examples of how you've been a good team player or how you've led successful teams.
Perfect. You're connecting the dots. You're showing them that you'd be a good employee, but also a good fit for the team.
Now, this brings up another good point. What about developing your skills, not just for one specific job, but for your whole career?
That's such a good point. Upskilling is an investment in yourself. It makes you a stronger candidate for any job.
It's not just about checking the boxes for one job. It's about always growing and staying ahead in your field.
The job market changes so quickly. New
Yeah.
technology, new trends all the time.
Exactly. By always learning new things, you make yourself more attractive to employers, but you also show that you're adaptable and care about growing.
And employers see that and they like it.
It shows them that you care about your career and you're willing to do the work to stay on top of things. Even if you already meet the requirements for a job, upskilling can help you stand out.
You're showing them you're not complacent, you're not settling. But where do you even start? It's so overwhelming.
Look at job descriptions for the kinds of jobs you want. What skills do they all seem to want? Focus on developing those. Be strategic. Make sure your goals for upskilling match your career goals.
Right. And take advantage of the resources that are out there. There are great online platforms like Coursera and Udemy and EDX. They have tons of courses.
And don't forget about workshops, conferences, and industry events. You can learn new things. AD Network.
And remember, it doesn't have to be this huge commitment. Even a few hours a week can make a big difference.
Make it a habit. Fit it into your life.
The more you learn, the more confident you'll feel, and that confidence will help you when you're job hunting and in your career overall.
I love that. I think we need to pause here for a second and give everyone a chance to process all this great information. We'll be back in just a minute to wrap up our deep dive into getting that dream job, even when you don't feel 100% qualified. We're back and ready to wrap up our deep dive into landing your dream job, even when you don't feel totally qualified. This has been a really eye-opening conversation.
We have covered a lot, from finding those hidden skills to that growth mindset idea and using networking.
And being honest and finding the right cultural fit and actively working to learn new things. It's a lot to think about, but I think the big takeaway is that it's all about giving yourself the power to go after what you want.
I agree. It's easy to get intimidated by a job posting, but like we've been saying, there are so many ways to bridge that gap and make yourself a really good candidate.
So for our listeners who are ready to take action, what's the one thing they should remember from all of this? What's the best advice we can give them?
Don't let feeling unqualified stop you from pursuing the career you want. Remember, applying for jobs, even when you don't feel 100% ready, can push you to grow and reach your full potential.
Instead of focusing on what you don't have, focus on what you do bring to the table. Highlight your transferable skills. Show them you're willing to learn and use your network.
And most importantly, remember that companies are often just as interested in your potential as they are in whether you have every single skill right now.
So don't be afraid to go for it. Put yourself out there. Show them what you can do. And you might just surprise yourself and get that dream job. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
We talked a lot about learning new skills for specific jobs, but what if you went even further? What if you figured out what the big trends in your industry are and started developing those skills now? That's how you become someone that any company would want to hire.
That's a great point to end on. Always be thinking ahead and looking at what's coming next. It's been great talking to you as always. Thanks for being on HR Game Changers.
Thanks for having me.